Okay. Oh, we are recording. Hi, Maria. Maria
Hi,
Wheatley.
Cara.
Maria Wheatley is here. My beloved friend, Maria Wheatley. I'm Cara St.Louis. We're going to talk about some stuff that's really important right now. I was just saying to Maria, tomorrow I'm packing tonight. Tomorrow I'm on the road for my United States tour. Maria has some amazing things coming up. And then, of course, together we're going to talk as we go through this conversation about the journey that we're doing together, the solstice journey that we're doing together in Ireland. But right now, let's see who's going. Are you doing any trips over Christmas, Maria?
No, not over Christmas, but my first trip will be for next season in March, which will be to Malta. So if everybody's interested in that, just go to theaveryexperience.co.uk.
I am, but I can't go. I'm busy. Anyway, yes, that sounds fantastic. What's the temperature like there in March in Malta? Is it nice? Is it warm?
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it has about sort of in March about 9 days rainfall a month, and it's averages between 14 and 16 degrees, which should be quite warm. So I think it will be really great. But Cara, I'm really interested in chatting to you today about your work with the Fae.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
did it come about?
Well, listen, okay. Whenever I have learned so much about talking about the Fae over the last couple of years, I started, you started it, Maria. Now that I think about it, you're the one who started it because you said to me one day, you looked at me and you said you could do some serious research on the Celtic heart. You did. And I said, Maria, what's the Celtic heart? And then it was an avalanche from there. Download after download after link after link after supposed coincidence, and now it wasn't very long before I knew an awful lot about the Fae. And I I'm in a situation now where about 70% of my work is research based, and that's good because a lot of people need to see evidence that they can file away under normal scientific procedure or accepted scientific evidence, that kind of thing, and that's great. But about 30% of it is downloads that I get from the Fae, and it's taken me a while. It's taken me for a while to be able to say, look, this is intuitive knowledge on my part. I receive it, and yeah, you resonate with it, you don't resonate with it, but I know what I know, and so I'm bringing it. And most people do resonate with that. If they're sitting in front of me listening to me talk about the Fae, it's for a reason. You know what I mean? So I started learning about it in that way. Now I'm going to start the way I start with my lectures when I do lectures about the Fae. First of all, the first thing I do is I tell people who they are. I usually people introduce themselves. I don't do that. I don't do that at first. I say, you're far more important than I am. And I'm going to tell you that you are the original magicians. You are the descendants of the Fae. You have a birthright that not only do you need to know about, but it is the one and only reason that you are being drowned in this diversionary, debilitating, multi-sensory distraction. It is all about keeping you from remembering who you are. And that's one of the things that took me to the Fae as well. I started with chemtrails. Once I moved on from chemtrails to social engineering, because that's sort of the next logical step. But now I realize, Maria, everybody's talking about social engineering, and that's what happens to us. We drive ourselves into these cul-de-sacs, it becomes a dead end. We've got as far as we can get. And what that says to me is that we need to know what's going on underneath that. So there's always someone coming up who's just learning about things. They talk about what's fresh and new for them. Yeah. So we can know that these things are being covered. I moved on to the Fae because I wanted to know who we were. Why us? Why? What was such a big deal about us that the powers that be, if you want to call them that, the predator, the enemy, is so invested in keeping us from knowing who we are? Well, it's patently obvious to me now that I've done all the research. It's because we are the descendants of in my view, and my research leads me to believe that the Fae were the first entities on this incarnation of this planet. Planet Earth has been through several incarnations. It just has. It has. The Fae were here first. The Fae were here first. And I told Maria recently, I just received a download, that the Fae actually were the entities that manifested. I'm still looking for the best word for this, Maria, but that manifested and covered the planet in electromagnetic potential fields called ley lines. They did this. And we'll get there. We'll get there. But the first thing I need for people to know is why us. And why us is because we're all descendants of the Fae. We're the original magicians. And our magic is this close to us all the time. We are always leaking out of our boxes, Maria. Always. They can barely keep us contained. And that's because we are so powerful. We are, and it's one of the things I've said for a long time anyway, is that the imagination is the translator between the morphogenic field, which is pure potential, and the material plane, which means we are constantly manifesting. We are constantly creating. And frankly, we're the only ones in the universe who can do it. We are that rare, we are that precious, and we are that special. Now, not too long after the Fae appeared jointly with this incarnation of this planet. There was an artificial intelligence that arrived. This artificial intelligence wanted to know how the Fae did what they did. Okay, it's been here for a very, very long time. So over the millennia, over the millions and millions and millions of years, and past a few catastrophic resets of our planet, which you know about, Maria, they have always managed to infiltrate us a little bit better than they did the time before. And for this artificial intelligence, it's about learning. It's about us being their arms and their legs. It's about trying to figure out how to do the things that we can do, which they have yet to be able to do. I mean, they can copy. You can, and it's funny, once you're onto this, it's really easy to see the copies. They don't enliven. It does not enliven anything. It simply copies. Okay. And when you have AI, I don't know, Maria, have you ever had some entity from the artificial intelligence sort of corner of things, like following you, copying everything you do? Because I have. Have you come up against that yet?
No, I haven't actually. Or if I have, I haven't been aware of it.
Okay, well, put garlic around your neck or something, because they will do that, and they're doing it more and more now. I have at least one or two entities following me all the time, copying what I do.
What sort of entities then, Cara? What sort of entities?
Well, they're human. Well, they seem to be human. They appear to be a human. They're in a human sort of visage, but they can't create. They can only copy. And so it's really interesting to see that were they originally human and they've been taken over by AI? Probably. There are people who think that there are clones out there. Probably. Not, for whatever reason, they follow behind and they make a copy of what you are doing. And the reason that they do that, whether it's my workshop or it's my this or it's my that, it is so that they can, like every other what do you call they want to control the narrative, right?
Okay.
For example, my workshop is all about which I've been doing online, and now I'm getting ready to roll a lot of them out in person. It's all about taking back your own thoughts. Our thoughts are not our own. It's part and parcel of this thing that I'm trying to describe, which is constant barrage of both internal dimensions, which I'm learning about the internal parasites, which are in dimensions that we are unaware of, and all of the external noise. Yeah. And then there are some parasites that can actually anyway, our thoughts are not our own. And so I am using this workshop all the time. People are telling me it's one of the most important skills they've ever learned. And someone came up right behind me and just sort of snagged the name and sent somebody into a workshop, copied part of it. And all of a sudden that's showing up.
Wow.
And so I have to tell people, look, AI has a vested interest in you not getting your own thoughts back. So just use your discretion. Yeah?
Sure.
Because that's really what that kind of thing is about. Anyway, Another reason it's really important to talk about the Fae right now, Maria, I'm not going to be spending after this winter a lot of time talking about the social engineering aspects. Okay, I'm going to do that all winter. I've got a lecture in California right in the middle of that fire zone that's coming up. So
Wow.
so I'm going to talk about social engineering there, and I'm going to include the hemp aspects because that area is the Emerald Triangle. This is a hugely successful area for medical marijuana growth that's now been burnt to the ground. This is social engineering. It's not something that I've talked about yet, so I'm going to talk about that. But after this winter, I'm not going to talk too much about that stuff because there was this event in the United States that has kind of passed by everybody, really. We called it the Great American Eclipse. You probably were aware of the eclipse, but that's because you're who you are. You know, you always have an eye to the stars and what those sorts of things. Most people, especially outside the United States, don't even know it happened. It was not, based on my discussions with people who know, it was not a natural event. If it was a natural event, unnatural things were piggybacked upon it, okay? And in fact, that you notice that eclipse cut the United States in half on a diagonal, yeah? Clean down on a diagonal. And I was told that that was actually a splice, an etheric splice, Maria. It wasn't an eclipse, it was an etheric splice, meaning what's organic and what is artificial intelligence was re-spliced together in such a way that it's even that much harder to tell the difference between the hologram and what's organic. Okay, when that eclipse happened, I happened to be in Germany. I had no phone, I had no computer. I was sitting on top of this crystal I told you about, which is an Earth Guardian crystal about the size of a London double-decker. And so that's where I was during the eclipse. When I finally got some contact with the outside world again, that's when I started finding this stuff out. But meanwhile, I had a real communication from the Fae. I don't want to call it anger. I want to call it urgency. And the reason it's really urgent that we start listening to them right now is because it's becoming much, much harder to differentiate between what's organic and what's artificial intelligence. And they inhabit, they are the organic world. They are wedded to the planet, you know? So why do they care? Next question, why do they care? Because there's another artificial intelligence headed our way. It is sort of circling, waiting for the one that is determined to run its program, you know, to get to a point where it's run its program. If this particular AI manages to land, it's going to be the Matrix. We are going to be batteries. It will be almost impossible for us to remember who we are, to remember our feet in the grass, okay? So this is why right now is the time. And that line down the center of the United States was a throwdown. It was the AI calling out the Fae in a way. And it's time to choose, humanity.
Yeah. That's really interesting about the eclipse, because one thing I noticed about the eclipse, the date of the eclipse, which was the 21st of August, wasn't it, was that it was actually called back in the times of 1914, the Great War Eclipse. It fell on exactly the same day, at exactly the same degree, which was also conjunct Regulus in Leo. So I thought that was no coincidence. No. That is exactly the same date. So that's, for me, that's confirmation, because I thought at the time, what are the chances of that?
Right, exactly. And see, this is why it's so important to step up and start talking about this right now. So I'm going to be doing Fae lectures all over the place. Plus, I'm also doing some lectures with a new colleague. Maria's one of my colleagues, my baby, my gorgeous Maria. And I've also got a new one. Yeah, I always say that all the time. I've got a new one, Shane the Ruiner. Bales, a really good friend of mine, has decided in the aftermath of this event, of this eclipse, that he's coming down on the side of the organic. He is one of the MyLab kids, although he doesn't really He doesn't really wrap himself up in that stuff. He considers himself, he's called the ruiner because they never could get him to do what they wanted him to do. So he actually wears that with pride, and I see that. That's fantastic. They couldn't get me to do it anyway. But he also comes from two Illuminati families, and so he's got quite the story, and he's a really good guy. And so we're going to be doing lectures on magic. The third volume of my book is called, there's a trilogy, the Imagination Trilogy. The third volume is called I, Magician. And so that's the name of our lectures as well, I, Magician. We'll be in the UK in May for a few months.
How exciting.
Yeah, we're going to be doing it here. We're going to go a couple places I want to go first out of a sense of gratitude, my lovey, and that is the the Multidimensional Show, Rachel Murphy, and also New Horizons. They've been awfully good to me. So those are the first two places we'll go. But we'll do this lecture all over the place with my workshop in conjunction. So those are really important reasons to talk about the Fae that I'm positive no one thinks of. I mean, not really, not in the general public. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So let me just address a couple. First of all, did you have any questions you want to ask?
Well, I mean, I think it is really important that we find out, our true history, our holy history about us. Yeah. I think that is so important for humanity to move forward. Mm-hmm. So that, to me, that is, an essential. It should be taught in schools. It should be, downloaded to everybody, because I think if we know our past, we know where we're going, and that's where someone like yourself and your own research comes in as a guidance for people as well, Cara, to understand themselves on a deep cosmic and earth-based level.
Right. And one of the things that I know, maybe you'll agree with me about this, but one of the most important places to start are the few bardic tales that still exist. Those are interesting things. The bards, I believe, correct me if I get this wrong, because I know you're more immersed in that aspect than I am, but the bards were actually on par with the druids, weren't they, at one point? Many thousands of years ago. Bards were magicians too, and there's a reason for that. Let's talk about really quickly. See, I get so nervous when I talk about lays in front of Maria because she's such an expert. However, a lot of what I know because of Maria. So, for example, the Fae put down the ley lines. The ley lines are electromagnetic grid, if you want to call it that, if that's the best way to put it. It sounds a bit mechanical to me. I don't like it that much. But they cover the planet. They cover the planet. There's a legend that the quote-unquote fairies were the protectors of the ley lines. It's an interesting way to put it. It has been misconstrued, really, because the Fae were, in fact, the guardians of the ley, because the Fae are so wedded to the energies that are in the ley. That's why they're one of the reasons they started reappearing, this century, because the ley lines are being so profoundly screwed with right now. It's alarming, and it should be alarming to humanity as well. Anyway, as Maria, I'm sure, knows, creation, you have, the thing about fairies, fae, the Tuatha, all of those entities that we know as the noble people, is that they have symbols, yeah? They have a sword, they have the spear of destiny, there's always a rock, which may or may not be sitting under the Queen of England's throne, and there's a cauldron, yeah? Well, the cauldron is a hugely important symbol for the Fae. I want to talk about that right now. You have the Norns, past, present, and future. They're also a symbol of, the energy, the magic that goes around the cauldron. But somebody pointed out to me, actually, when I was in my Waldorf teacher training, that the cauldron, which they spit into, I think, and they do that in Shakespeare's Macbeth, is actually the larynx. This is the larynx out of which we create, right? Now, Maria, when we were talking about putting together Guardians of Blood and Fire, she pointed me in the direction of this most amazing locality in France where something like 26 ley lines come together in a point, right?
24, yeah.
24, and the name of that is, and I can't ever pronounce it properly. What is it, Maria?
Like Elise.
Yeah. Anyway, they come together in this point, and there are many of those around the world, I believe. And then if you look at those, and you look at the lines of latitude that go around the planet as well, you have something of a grid. If you use your voice in ways that we certainly could tune into if we wanted to, and I think fairly easily if we could throw off the bullshit, okay? You create a Pythagorean tower, a hyperbolic tower. It rises, and I believe create, okay, with sound. And this is something that the Fae knew. This is certainly something the Druids knew, you know. I don't like to call them the same entity, but the Druids would certainly be immediate descendants of the Fae. They're so powerful and so, you know, so filled with the Earth's magic. Anyway, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because that particular ley line, that particular point, nexus, shall we call it a nexus? Does that make sense? That particular nexus is very close to the headquarters of CERN.
Absolutely. And just before we sort of mention that, Cara, I'd just like to point out a beautiful symbol of the cauldron that is associated to the temple of Delphi, which is all about oracle and voice. And this seems quite out of place in Delphi, because when we have a look at the ancient Greek architecture, it is very structured. But in the middle of Delphi, you have on about a 20-foot kind of pole, for want of a better, a plinth, if you will, a massive cauldron.
That's a sign of the Fae. They've been there. Boom, planted my flag.
So it is a massive, massive cauldron, and it is just so out of place almost to the architecture that when you said that, and the larynx and the throat, I thought that that's its place in Delphi. But yeah, you're right, on that ley grid, it does seem to have CERN located quite upon it.
Right. That's, I mean, messing with the ley lines. It's like I said, it's an interesting thing. A friend of mine said to me, look, the artificial intelligence is just, they're aching for a throwdown with the Fae. They're trying to draw the Fae out. So the question is, should it be a one-on-one kind? Do you know what I mean? Are the Fae going to actually come in that kind of circumstances? I think they're going to do whatever they want to do, you know. Anyway, let's talk about as well the last 200 to 400 years, because there's a couple of things we can talk about. Here's another reason it's really, really important to move from social engineering into rediscovering the Fae. Okay, between 200 and 400 years ago, the Dracos ruled this planet. Okay, I think many of us are okay with the idea that there were entities that came to this planet because we had something they wanted, baby. We had something they wanted, so they were here for a long time. Anyway, between 200 and 400 years ago, they decided that mostly they didn't want to be here anymore, so they left. They're not all gone, but mostly the majority of them decided they wanted to go. They left, and they said to the human beings, if you want to call them that were their partners in governing this planet, you may now say whatever you want to say. You can tell people who's been around. You can tell people about us. You can give them all the technology that we're leaving you. You're more than welcome to do that. But those few humans decided not to do that. They decided to keep it all for themselves. This is one of the reasons that we're in the situation that we're in. Begs the question all the time, though, Maria. Well, wait a minute. You know, they're doing all this stuff to us to keep us from waking up. Is it not happening to them too? Yeah, you know what? It is. It is happening to them because the Dracos didn't leave them a plan B. They have no plan B. So they have to go around acting like this is what they meant all along. Okay? And everything's cool. You know, the way I characterize it is like we're in a pickup truck, like they're driving a pickup truck and we're in the back and they're just headed for a tree. But they have to pretend that that tree is where they meant to go. And it's going to be fine. When we crash into that tree, that's what was supposed to happen. Damn it. Okay, but that's the deal. The Drakes left and left them no plan B. They did give them the option to share everything with the rest of humanity, though, and they did not do that. So that's one of the reasons that we're in the situation that we're in right now. I mean, I'm just bringing that up because it's always good to know what, who, why, where, when, and how we're being suckered. You know what I mean? The other thing that I want to say, though, and maybe you'll have some things to say about this, I'm not sure, but what I learned when I rolled out my very, very first day lecture in Byron Bay in Australia is that people have very special places in their hearts and their souls for these entities. Whatever it is, Maria, that they think we're talking about when I say fae, could be elementals. Most often it's elementals, which are mighty and amazing and wonderful and for real and all of that. But it's almost as much of an insult to the elementals to call them fae as it is to the fae to call them elementals. These are all mighty, powerful earth, beings. And when people find out that I'm actually talking about a seed race from another planet, you can see their little hearts crumble right in front of your eyes. And I feel really badly about that. So I always start also my lectures by saying things like, this is not the fairy at the bottom of your garden. You know what I mean? I respect and I honor what your thoughts and your heart says to you about the elementals and all of those sorts of things, but that's not really what I'm here to talk about, So, yeah, let me move. So, and we did talk about the eclipse, and we talked about the AI that's coming on, and we talked about the Fae putting the ley lines into place, all right, and the AI that's on its way, okay. Right, so we talked about the Bardic Tales. Now, I'm going to recommend one Bardic Tale to you that I think is more important than all the rest of them, and that is the Battle of Moytura. And you can see that. I saw it, and I just was gobsmacked by the whole thing. There's a guy that Maria probably knows called Robin Williamson. You know him?
No.
Oh, he told the Battle of Moytura at Megalithomania 2009. You should have a listen. When I listened to it, it was about the Tuatha De Danann landing in fiery ships, which, by the way, it is written in the few Irish documents, I guess you could say, that still exist, that they came from another planet, and that future kings of Ireland always had an eye toward the sky for invaders. So it's about their landing in their fiery ships, the Firbolg, who were already here, and the Fomorans, who came supposedly across the sea or from under the sea. When I first heard that tale, I took it at face value because it's a beautiful tale, and I also think that there's an actuality that goes along with that, this sort of noble race of the Tuatha. But then I started to look at it a little bit more deeply when I figured out that actually the Fae arrived here much, 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 much earlier. I mean, everybody who's working on this stuff, Maria, don't you agree? It keeps pushing back the sort of beginning. It keeps going further and further and further and further back, So I decided to look at this Bardic tale in a different way and see what the metaphors were. And I'm sure that it's a very dense tale that I haven't even begun to unpack. But if you look at it as the Fomorans coming either from over the sea or under the sea to this island, which used to be called Ironland, you might be talking about a period of time, a vast period of time, that was the transition between Lemuria and Atlantis, because Lemuria was a very wet, sort of not quite solid incarnation of the earth, to the best of my understanding. The other thing that I've been taught to do with all of these tales, whether it's Bardic tales or it's Zachariah Sitchin stuff or Enkidu and Enlil and all that, is that most tales have a Draco signature now. Most tales have been taken and refashioned to suit the Draco agenda. And generally what that means is there will be savior programming, a savior event in these tales. So I'm unpacking that tale still. For me, it became much more meaningful when I realized how very long ago the Fae actually appeared here. They're still with us, like I said. They're wedded to the earth in ways that we don't really understand. Before I move on to some of the other stuff, though, I want to say that there are people out there who are being a bit sloppy in terms of characterizing many different entities in ways that, like, they're all being thrown in one bag of evil. And that's not how it is at all. Maria's going to know about this. There's somebody saying the jinn, demons, archons, and the fae are really the same thing with different
Yeah,
names.
I have heard that, Cara, yeah.
That's absolute bull. That's nonsense, Maria. It's absolute nonsense. They couldn't be more different. Okay. the jinn live in that space between waking and sleeping. If you have ever been sort of in that space between waking and sleeping, that's where I see them. And I see people drawing what they call fae, and to me they look just like the jinn that I saw between waking and sleeping. You have to be very, very careful of the jinn. They appear as whatever they want you to think they are. So come on. All right. That's number one. Demons, actually, strangely enough, Thomas Sheridan has a theory on demons that I quite like. He said one time that he considers that they might just be wildlife from another dimension that we've trapped accidentally.
That's intriguing.
It is intriguing, isn't it? And of course, they're flipping out over here in a dimension that they never asked to come to, and we don't know how to put them back. And the Catholic Church uses them like, clubs to beat us all over the head. And maybe they don't have arms and legs, and then they figure out, oh, I can work that human hand. So this idea that they might be wildlife, considered on a category of wildlife from a different dimension, I find very intriguing. I think you might be onto something there. And then there's the archons. Well, John Lash brought that to our attention. The Gnostics have known about the archons for a long, long time. And frankly, my research lately, which I don't claim credit for because it's actually Colin Wilson's work, into these mind parasites. I know I was talking to you about this book because it just blew me away. These mind parasites on different internal dimensions that actually kind of occupy what we might consider the collective unconscious as well, right? That's also intriguing. But then take those three entities and say the Fae, as a seed race, arrived here 300 million years ago or better, and
Wow.
evolved the ley lines. And then at a certain point, my view is that what happened to the Fae was very much along the lines of what you have said is happening with the water right now. They decided to retreat inside the earth, wed themselves to the earth in ways that they felt were necessary and important. And frankly, I think the earth took them in as well. I think it was a mutual decision. Yep. And this is what you said has been happening with the water. The water's going in. The water's a sentient being. The water's going in to heal and be healed. And that's where I think the Fae reside now. When I look at all four of those titles of entities, they bear no resemblance. None of them bear any resemblance to the next. I think it's just a lazy shorthand to do that, and I don't like it. I don't like it. So, you could make a case that the archons, the jinn, and demons are evil. Okay, I guess you could make that case. You could make a case that the Fae are amoral because they don't need to subscribe to the morality or the ethic building structure, the ethics structure that we have in 21st century humanity. They're out, just like the elementals, they are outside that structure. They have no need for that structure. When you cross, for example, you may have some stories about this. If you do, I'd love to hear them. But when you say cross a fairy line, I know that there's a lot of folklore about not getting too near a spot that's considered to be a fairy race, or crossing a line, an energy line. I don't think that there's any harm intended by the fae who may be guarding, who's shepherding that energy. I think we get into energy we don't understand. We get into magnetic energy that can affect us so profoundly. It feels like an assault, you know, because we're no longer aware of what we're doing or what we're getting into, or how we can tap into that stuff, you know. There's also
Exactly. I think, like you said earlier, Cara, a lot of our kind of understanding of how to live, you know, maybe in harmony with other dimensions and beings. We've kind of all lost that, and it's like you were saying from the get-go. It's about remembering, and remembering these type of truths that can guide us to become more whole and to help Mother Earth, hopefully.
Yes, well, and that's the first thing the fae care about. It's just that they care about the trees, so the apples get cared about too, you know. And they also know that we're important to the earth, so they care about us. But the fae are not a savior race, so don't anybody get that in your brain. They're not. They're not a savior race. If any kind of savior programming is artificial and draconian, and not okay. Not okay. We are our own saviors, and all they're doing is with their hands out, saying, "This is your heritage. You are me. You can do what I do. You just have to know that now." You know, it's not a savior race. They're our ancestors, and they're back because they're worried about our planet, and subsequently they're worried about us. I mean, this is their job. Their job is Sophia. Their job is this incarnation of the planet, you know? Anyway, so what else, my love? What would you like to hear about?
Well, I was thinking, Cara, how for sort of people listening that, you know, resonate with what you're saying about the fae and it's our ancestry and they were the seed race, how could, have you got any guidance on how we can commune and, you know, interact with the fae?
Yeah, first of all, you have to quiet your mind, okay? You have to quiet your mind because there's nothing but noise going on in your mind. There may be other people who are teaching you ways to quiet your mind. I'm sure I'm not the only one, right? Maria's probably doing work along those lines. She probably is. So find a way, and I never, ever, ever mean finding a space of sort of no mind. Anytime you create a vacuum, that's just a freaking invitation to party for the entities, you know? Don't do that. Don't do that. You need, the meditation I teach is a material meditation. It's got a point A, it goes all the way. There's no left, there's no right. It builds the muscle of that concentration. In the end, it creates a thought form, Maria. It creates a thought form, okay? And you end up at the archetype of whatever object you've selected to meditate. It's a bit detailed to construct your own meditation, but when you end up at an archetype or an or of anything, where are you? You're in the morphogenic field. You have deliberately touched the field again. Oh my God. So anyway, what you need to do is somehow gain control of your thoughts. Gain control of your thoughts, and don't ask for a vacuum. Once you get started on that, then you will hear them, you will see them, it's about getting in touch with your own magic, you know, and because they are not a savior race, they really just want you to get hold of your own power again. And so once you start to get hold of your own power again, you are in touch with them. You are, okay? And just be confident that that's what's happening. Just be confident that that's what's happening, you know? Now, for those of you out there who need a little bit of solid evidence, that's fine, because I found the solid evidence that's around this planet to be absolutely overwhelming. It's an avalanche, okay? It's a freaking avalanche. Let's start with the fact that the Fae originally at some point came from a planet called Phecda, Phecda, and it's the bottom left-hand corner of the Big Dipper, okay? Whenever Polaris is our pole star, the Big Dipper, when it goes through the seasons, appears to rotate around Polaris, yeah? And as it does that, it makes a form that we are all extraordinarily familiar with. It makes a swastika as it goes around, all right? The swastika is one of the most common symbols on this planet. I think the original, the oldest archaeological evidence, to my knowledge today, of a swastika has been found at 40,000 years ago. So you got it, first of all, so you have to blow off this whole Hitler thing, okay? You just have to
definitely.
get rid of that. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. So this was this little post-it note that the Fae put all over the planet in the form of the swastika. It's like a little hello. And I'm sure there's a lot of potent magic in it too. I know that lots of, Buddhists and Chinese are very attached to the symbol of the swastika. The Hopi are very attached to that symbol. It's everywhere, okay? And it's only been in the last 100 years that it's become a negative symbol. Okay, it's not a negative symbol. Second of all, I believe that there was a diaspora, if you want to call it that. I don't think there was anything negative about it. I think that the Fae left Ireland to go places. I mean, the first place they would have gone would be Wales and Scotland, yeah? I think the Picts were Fae. As far as I know, the Picts didn't call themselves Picts. We don't know what they called themselves, okay?
That's right. They were just called like the painted people, weren't they, really?
Exactly. And iron, which is associated with the Fae and associated with Ireland and fairies, this is woad that they worked into their bodies, and every indigenous ancient culture did that, okay? And in fact, when you're twirling like a dynamo in your dance and you're covered with this stuff, it increases your magic and it amplifies your electromagnetic potential to create, okay? This is well, yeah, it's magic. You want to call it magic. I don't want to call it technology. Technology and magic don't exist in the same spot. They are not the same thing. Technology, magic, okay? Anyway, so, and how do you cross the Irish Sea? In a ferry, for God's sake, okay? So once you start that step, you're into the etymology, and the etymological evidence of the Fae is everywhere, all over the planet, in every language. The other two things that I want you to think about is that it's very clear, even now, that there's been at least one global civilization. Many archaeologists, I'm in Maria's territory again, will say, oh my God, there's the same symbol or the same little squat goddess in Finland that I just found in Peru. How did that happen? What do you mean, how does it happen? What do you mean, how does it happen? There was a global civilization, and the only differences of which were environmental. Okay, you got the jungles, you got the snow, jungle. But there has been at least one thriving, mighty global civilization. And I believe, like Sylvia Ivanova, if you don't know her work, you need to know her work. I believe, like her, that it was very much in evidence till a couple hundred years ago. But again, does that not coincide with the Drakes leaving and turning it over to these lovely godfathers of ours who, who stole and bogarted every bit of everything, and they're still desperately trying to keep that going, okay? So and then you have the change of history. Now, this is when the Catholic Church takes over, and Maria, my view is there was not a paternal gesture on this planet until the Catholics got a hold of religion. Okay, it has always been matrilineal. It has always been maternal, and it's not. It's not because I'm dissing the male energy. I find, and I think it's really, really important that now that we reestablish the sacred masculine as much as we reestablish the sacred feminine.
Exactly, it's about balance.
Yeah, that's not what I mean at all. What I mean is it's epigenetics. It all comes through the mother. This idea that I was in my grandmother's womb because because when my mother was in there, every egg she was ever going to have. That is an organic maternal power line. And since women give birth at that moment of touching, the cosmos at the moment of birth, that's all it is. That's all it is. Okay, it's not like an anti-man thing at all. That kind of thing just makes me mad. But it was my view at this moment. At this moment, what I think is that Rome, the army, could never capture Ireland, which which I think is bloody amazing.
Thank goodness.
Okay. But the Catholic Church, the church. The Caesars killed all the Druids in Gaul. That's what started the whole, unfortunate series of events. And by the time the Catholic Church got to Ireland, I think this is when the Fae decided, wherever they were at that time, they were probably the Tuath Day. I'm saying Tuath Day now, because that means children or race of God. Is it children of God, race of God, something like that? God's race. Anyway, that's I think when they retreated, and they took one of the most powerful spells that I've ever come across. I've always been absolutely drawn to the Faith Fiata, the cry of the deer. I think that is the world's most powerful spell. It still exists, but it was stolen by the Catholic Church. That moment, I think the Faith Fiata is actually a witness to that moment.
Wow.
The Catholics came in, or whatever you want to call them, the Pope, the usurper, and created a paternalistic society. Pope Gregory, see, this is all this research we've been doing for the last 5 years, Maria. Pope Gregory decided to rewrite history, had the Jesuits rewrite history to suit the Catholics, and everything started to become lost, and that new history was shoved down our throats at the point of a knife in the guise of the Inquisition.
For sure.
And females, female apparitions all around the world, Maria, right? But
definitely.
they became not the women in white. They became Mary. They became Mother Mary, as opposed to, it's all been stolen, and it's all the Fae. It's all the Fae. So I think that this is a pretty exciting time to be alive, in the sense that it's the turn of the tide, and in the sense that the Fae are giving us what we need to remember, who we are. Frankly, my belief is that if just one of us woke up to our complete and true power, we could stop the whole thing in its tracks. I really believe that, Maria. So so that's what I'm going to be talking about, because for a very long time to come, and that's why I'm going to be talking about it. What else, my love?
Well, I think for me, Cara, listening to you, it's very empowering to be aware of our own thoughts, to be able to have magic as part of our lives, to manifest our true purpose and understand ourselves and to co-create. It's very, very empowering. So I see that as, like a massive step for humanity moving forward, by being able to understand thought process, what is their thought, and moving on forwards that way, which is it's a beautiful magic.
It is. And just remember, she's absolutely right. Absolutely right. But remember, as we become more powerful, as we become more aware of who we are, there's always an entity that walks in lockstep with us that will try to stop that from happening, that has a vested interest in stopping that from happening. I feel like as long as you're aware of that, then everything's okay, because you could recognize sort of the rabbit droppings or something. Oh, look at that. Yeah. But yeah, so, she's absolutely correct about that. It's all about our magic. It's all about our magic. And you remember a couple of years ago in 2013, when I started seeing Kali, well, I saw Kali on the side of the Empire State Building, and it freaked me out, and I was talking about that. Right before this eclipse, I started seeing Kali's image again. Everywhere, right? And it was actually Shane 2 or 3 years ago who talked about the fact that the calibrating infrastructure of CERN is called Kali.
Ah.
Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, it's all coming together, guys. It's all coming together, and I invite you to go with us because in that direction. Because I really wasn't kidding when I said that eclipse was a line in the sand, and now you get to choose. Now you get to choose, and you have to realize. I think it's important to realize that there have been probably 2 or 3 generations now who've been normalized to all of this artificial intelligence nonsense via gaming. They don't have any idea that they're not in the organic sphere when they're doing that, you know? And so there's a big part of our population who can't wait for, I mean, they're like, hey, the future's here. Great. Give me an artificial whatever, you know?
Exactly.
That's the line. That's the line. And I don't know how you felt about it, Maria, but ever since that eclipse, I have these profound periods of feeling absolutely melancholy. And Shane and I were talking about that, and he said, well, of course you do. You're not used to being that much pushed that much further away from the organic. And so, of course, there's some mourning, there's some melancholy, there's some unnamed, unnameable sort of loss, feelings of loss. And I remember a few times, the thing that I couldn't throw off was this longing for people who are on the other side of the threshold now, you know? It was like that. It was like that. Have you experienced that lately?
Well, to some degree, I feel, because I really do feel I agree with you. I think the energies did change with that great eclipse. It was a point, I think, to hopefully waken humanity up a little bit. And there's an approaching supermoon coming up, isn't there, on December the 3rd in Gemini. And I feel that's a kind of build-up as well from the eclipse. It's the only supermoon this year, if I can remember correctly. Okay. I think it's the only supermoon, and I think the kind of the energy of the eclipse is going to be kind of welling up in this supermoon. The moon's going to be very close to planet Earth at that period, perigee. So I think that's a time when maybe our emotions will be even more heightened, you know, for good and for bad alike, you know. So I'm trying to prepare myself for the supermoon.
Yeah, it's all about waking us up. It's all about and being born is not, you know, being born is rough. It's rough. It's a rough process, you know, and that's really what's happening. Which leads me to remember that, you know, Jupiter was just born via Virgo. Yes, when was that? It wasn't too long ago. It was right after the eclipse, wasn't it? Yeah. So that was very, very important, because one of the reasons that I find that to be very important is I'm always looking for signs of the Fae around in art and illustrations around the planet. And one of the most, I think, famous illustrations that the church took over, I think, was this image of Mary standing barefoot on top of the planet with the 12 stars around her head. Yeah. And her bare feet are standing on top of the snake. For me, that was the Fae vanquishing the Draco. That's what I've always taken that to mean once I sort of had different facts at my fingertips. It could be lots and lots of things. Of course, you know, these things are multi-layered. The one thing I think it isn't is Catholic. Get that out of your head right now. Has nothing to do with the Vatican or the Catholic Church or any of that jazz, okay? For me, these images of Mary, particularly when they're images of the Pietà, those are portals. Those are portals. And actually, I said that once on a basis, and then I don't think it made it to air. But yes, I've said that before. The Pietà is a portal. Those images are portals. Okay, you can't necessarily take those at face value. Certainly, You can't take anything at face value if it's wrapped up in the Catholic Church or the Vatican, okay? So these images of women, the 12 stars, that's pretty obvious, standing barefoot on the earth.
Wow.
How organic is that? I've said recently, I don't care how many, because there are people out there right now who are wise and experienced and not doing us any favors, Maria, because they're pushing the AI agenda a little bit. And
Okay.
they will say that right now what we are inhabiting are our avatars. And I cry bullshit. I am not inhabiting an avatar right now. My feet, I still feel the grass under my feet. Even if it's here, I know that's the grass and it's under my feet. And I don't care how many layers of holograms are over me, like, 1,000 Russian nested dolls. I still have my feet on the earth. And so to tell me that I'm inhabiting my avatar, okay, so that's just riding with the movie, isn't it? That's very convenient. That's very convenient. It's a very convenient way to, in a way that will speak to our young people, certainly, about us being completely disconnected from the organic beings that we are. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about right now by this interference by artificial intelligence. It's giving us, it's using all of the stuff that it's put into place over the last 100 years in terms of imagery and those sorts of things to convince us that something's going on that is not going on. Okay? I'm not an avatar. Maria's not an avatar. I just don't believe that. I don't buy it. Not
it doesn't ring true.
No, it's not where we are right now. So anyway, this is all about the Fae. So as you can see, the topic of the Fae is hugely important, and it has absolutely nothing to do with my beloved elementals, and they are beloved. Believe me, they are. Think what the sylphs are going through right now up in the air.
Exactly.
Think what the undines are battling in all of the in the water. The undines, I used to teach my class, the undines are in anything that flows, whether it's a tear that falls or the river, that runs. So they're up against it. They're absolutely up against it. But what belongs to us is fire. That fire is ours. The fire, the genesis, the creation potential, the creation element, this is our bailiwick. I just did an interview with Jessica Boza not too long ago where we talked about the various kinds of fire, Yeah, so so unless you have something else, I want to quickly, two things I want to talk about real quick, because I'm going out of town tomorrow. I'm going on a 2-month tour.
Wow.
Oh my
Have a great time, Cara.
Thank you. But I'm going to visit my kids for Thanksgiving and Christmas because I've got a couple of birthdays in there for them.
Oh.
I know, right? And I'm also going to New Orleans for the first time, doing 2 lectures and a workshop. And then I'm heading up.
Fantastic.
I know. I'm actually lecturing in this place that was owned by a voodoo princess or something. I don't know. I'm going to get the lowdown on it when I get there.
It's getting better by the minute, Cara.
I know, right? And then I'm going north of San Francisco to talk about, originally it's at Ion's Earthrise in Petaluma, which is a place I like to go every year. It's just a beautiful place to go. It's not like, it's just, I like to go there because it's beautiful. But that happens to be right in the middle of the fire territory, this big Santa Rosa fire and all the potential directed energy weapons, and wiping out the Emerald Triangle, which is the beautiful, fruitful, healthy medicinal marijuana plantations that were thriving there. The governor of California had just given them the right to use appellations like the vintners, so that they could say which county they were from, that kind of thing. So it really elevated it to an artisanal level, really gave them the recognition they deserve. So, but it's burnt to a crisp now. They're all gone. It's all gone. Every bit of it's gone. So I made that lecture free to the public, and then I have a workshop the next day, and we're just sort of fundraising the costs for that one. And then, then after that, I'm going to have Christmas for the kids, and I'm going to do 2 lectures with Shane the Ruiner, my lovely Shane, in
Fantastic.
in Niagara Falls.
Oh.
I know, in Niagara Falls, babe. I mean, we both wanted to be kind of standing in front of that water when we rolled out iMagician for the first time. You can imagine.
Wow.
That's the inception of that one. And then we'll do Toronto. That's the 6th of January in Niagara and the 9th of January in Toronto. And then we have tons of stuff that we've got planned for the rest of the year. But one of the very best things I'm doing this year is I'm going to Ireland with Maria. We're doing a journey. I'm so excited. It's a solstice journey, which means we're going to celebrate the solstice in the most magical place probably we could, one of the most magical places that we could celebrate it. And we're going to go from stem to stern doing the Fae and sacred sites and sacred. We're going to be doing stem to stern magic from the minute we set our feet on the ground to move through Ireland until the minute we're done. We're going to weave a cloth of magic for everybody. So come with us on that one. We're looking forward. January 7th. No, not January.
June.
June 17th to the 23rd or the 24th, one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is we are going to have, a real spiritual journey and a pilgrimage across Ireland. We're going to start off at places like Newgrange, which are well-known tourist sites. But what is very special about, this journey together, Cara, is we're going to touch upon sites lesser well-known like Griannan, and we're going to celebrate the solstice at Creevy Keel, which is a wonderful court tomb, as they're called in Ireland, that have nothing to do with death, but more to do with initiation.
Right.
And aligned to the stars. See, and we're going to go to Carrakeel and Carramore. But I think, whenever we go on a spiritual journey, we do find things within ourselves and understand ourselves a bit differently, because I've always said that the ancient sites take us from the ordinary to the extraordinary. So I'm really looking forward to Ireland. And Cara, if people want to find out more about Ireland, you've got something on your Facebook, haven't you? Would you like to explain that?
You can either go to, you can go to my author's page and I will direct you, or you can email me at worldlectures, one word, all lowercase, WORLDLECTURES@AOL.com. And I will hook you up with all of the information that you need. Maria has given me a final itinerary with beautiful explanations and beautiful photographs. And, I can shoot that to you so you can see exactly what we're talking about. When we get together and we start talking about this stuff, those videos are always available for you to see what exactly it is that we're talking about. And frankly, Maria asked me a while back in this interview, how do you know when you contacted the Fae? You're going to know. You're going to know when you get to the end of this journey. Because could you feel that? Did you just feel that? You're going to
Definitely.
know. You're going to know because they're going to be there. And they're going to be there. They want you to hear your own story. They want you to hear your own story. And I think I'm stopping for a workshop at some place along the lines. Am I not?
Yeah, and I think the great thing about this, Cara, is the guests will be able to, talk to you personally about, the Fae and how to work with them. And I'm sure there's going to be spontaneous workshops developing at each and every site. So that was, people can contact that by worldlectures@AOL.com. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Well, then, any inquiries, please go to that. And and if you've got any questions about the ancient sites, you can contact me at Maria Wheatley, or one word, lowercase, at AOL.com, or go to my website, theaveryexperience.co.uk. And Cara and I will help you and discuss the tour with you. So, just ask away.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, my angel, I am going to go to the United States now.
Wow. Well, have a fantastic time.
Okay, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming and chatting with me about it. It's always really good. These things, it's in conversation that we release this information. It's in conversation that we release this information. It's always really important to talk about it. We have epiphanies all the time when we're talking to each other. Okay. So that's one of the things that we do. Okay. I will speak to you soon. Yeah.
Oh, I have a fantastic time in the States and enjoy your lectures, especially the one in New Orleans.
Oh, I know, right? All right. Thank you, babe. See you